Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenos dias, Hafaday, Tiro, and Faisho. Before we proceed with today's committee meeting, I would like to inform everyone who's in the Senate chamber that this meeting is being streamed live for our viewing public on cable television channel 23, the legislature's Facebook page, and the Senate's YouTube channel. At this time, I would like to respectfully request for everyone in the chamber to please put your cell phone and other electronic devices on silent mode. Thank you. It is my honor to welcome you all this afternoon. Thank you for joining the Senate Standing Committee on Resources, Economic Development, Programs, and Gaming. I am Senator Karina Magovnia from the 3rd Senatorial District and the chairwoman of this committee. I now call this meeting to order. Today is April 23rd, 2024 at approximately 1:39 p.m. here in the Senate chamber of the Honorable Jesus P. Sablan Memorial Building, Capitol Hill, Saipan. I now recognize L.A. Duenas-Tagoville to please call the roll.
Senator Francisco Q. Cruz, Senator Jude Schneider, Senator Karina L. Magovnia,
Present.
Senator Donald M. Mangonia,
Present.
Senator Paul A. Mangonia. Madam Chair, all 5 members are present.
Thank you, L.A. With 5 members present, we meet the necessary quorum to conduct today's meeting. And before we move to the next item on the agenda, I would also like to recognize the Legislative Bureau staff who are here assisting us this afternoon. We have our legal counsel, Joe Bermudez, our legislative assistant, Jolene Duenas-Tagoville, Sergeant at Arms, Jonathan de Leon Guerrero, and our IT, Delbert Camacho. We now move on to the next item on the agenda. Can I please get a motion to adopt today's agenda?
So move.
Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. The agenda for this meeting is hereby adopted. Thank you, members. Next, we have public comments. The floor is now open for public comments. If there's anyone in the gallery that wishes to provide comments on today's committee meeting, please step forward. If not, let the record reflect there's none here in the gallery to provide comments. At this time, the committee invites OPD and its team into the chamber. Please go. Sidus Masi, Mrs. Balhaja, and to your team for making the time to come in today to provide the committee members with updates from OPD. At this time, please introduce yourself and your team and provide any opening remarks if you have any. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Karina Magovnia and members of this committee. My name is Elizabeth Balahaja, and I'm the Acting Director for the Office of Planning and Development. Under the Office of Planning and Development, under Public Law 20-20, they inserted the Capital Improvement Program. And this is to my right, Narissa Karakaya. And to my left is our Deputy Director for Office of Planning and Development, Mr. Chris Sablan. So the Office of Planning and Development and also the office that we oversee includes projects that are funded from different federal programs, such as the EDA, US EPA, others from the SWIFR grant. We have the Capital Improvement Program, which is funded under the 702 Covenant funding. Also under our office, we handle the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Project funded under FEMA.
Sidus Masi for your opening remarks. We now move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is new business. At this time, I would open up the floor for OPD to provide us highlights and status of what you feel the committee members need to know, as well as the community.
And we will start with the Office of Planning and Development, and I will have Mr. Chris Sablan kind of go through our
Sidus
projects.
Masi. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman and members. Thank you for having us. As Acting Director Liz has stated, we have several projects under OPD alone. I'll just go through by granting agency. So under the Economic Development Administration, which is a branch under the U.S. Department of Commerce, we have two construction projects, which is the OLI Sports Complex and Cultural Event Center. It is a $21 million project. The second infrastructural project that we have funded through the EDA is the Garapan Revitalization Project, which is I believe, $9 million project. And so those are the two MPO. I'm sorry, not MPOT. Those are two projects that we're seeking MPOT support to front load those costs, as those projects are on a reimbursement basis. We have a planning grant as well under the EDA, which is for the Economic Recovery and Feasibility Carrier Capacity Study. This is a $1 million grant that's currently underway, ongoing. We have a contractor who is performing the work for this study. It should be completed by the end of this fiscal year. In addition to that, as indicated by Acting Director, we also have our SODR funds through the EPA, which is the Additional Supplemental Appropriation for Disaster Relief Act funds. And this is the huge pot of funding through the EPA that's hinged on the completion of our comprehensive solid waste management plan, which also we're anticipating completion within this calendar year, and with approval possibly into early next year. Along with that, we have the Tinian Zero Waste Study, which is, of course, a component of that master plan that is also underway. Other projects that we have under the Office of Planning and Development are there's individual activities under the ASADRA grant or equipment that we are also looking to procure. And these funds, again, just for the awareness of the members, these funds were intended to support the Super Typhoon U2 recovery. So a lot of the equipment that we have been pre-approved to procure are really intended to answer or to resolve the remaining debris and Super Typhoon U2 related solid waste matters that need to be attended to. So we are working on the procurement of a multi-shredder to handle the back 40, what we call the back 40 debris at the landfill. We also had just recently issued a RFP to assess, design, and develop the small community landfill for Punta Diablo and Tinian. Today is actually the closing for that RFP. We're accepting of proposals, but we are allotting the 1 week time frame for those who are submitting proposals from off island. So we should have them completed by the end of by the 30th is our deadline for that. In addition, we also have a MARPI backup power study, which is a project funded by the Department of Energy and FEMA. And it's essentially a study of the most viable combination of power sources to supply 24-hour power at MARPI. We're seeking the renewable components of that project we are seeking funding through the Priority Climate Action Plan, which is headed by Special Policy Advisor Tina Sablon. We had submitted that, I believe, last week. I think the deadline is the end of this month for those projects to be submitted. On top of that, we also are involved in a lot of environmental rehabilitation and studies. One of them is the Enhancing Wetlands and Core Resilience in Saipan's Priority Management Watershed Project. This is funded through the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. This is actually a pretty large project between BCQ, DFW, OPD, Department of Agriculture, and it's been quite successful, particularly with the restoration of coral, the spawning of coral reef. In our last meeting, I believe they've reached over 5,000 new spawns of reef. So this has been a very, very successful project. On the fish and wildlife side, it's mainly with the restoration of our wetlands. So we're in the process of onboarding a wetland biologist who will be assisting with that effort, I think sometime in July. And then we also have two active brick projects which are funded by hazard mitigation, FEMA hazard mitigation. One is the assessment of blighted buildings, which I know is a topic of interest. And of course, the other one is the micro beach assessment, which is to address the shoreline erosion that's occurring right with there. Those two projects have already been, RFPs have been issued. The micro beach project, we are going through negotiations right now with the selected contractor. So those are actively being worked on as we speak. In addition, we also have the Garapan Brownfields project, which is basically an assessment of the potential sites for phase 1 and phase 2 assessments under the Brownfields program. So it's essentially, I believe we're looking at targeting 8 for phase 1 and 4 for phase 2 at the moment. We have a working group that's actively identifying potential sites.
Can I just,
Sure.
sorry, can I just ask what specifically is that targeted, that project is for?
Sure.
Because there's phase 1 and phase 2, right? So what is it that the program, what's the objective of the program?
Sure. So with the phase 1, it's basically just collecting historical data on the site. Once the site has been identified as potentially a contaminated area,
Specifically where in Garapan?
well, they're still
Oh,
identifying.
they're still
Yeah.
assessing, okay.
At this point, it's been difficult to identify individual areas in Garapan because many of the areas are privately owned.
Okay.
So what we've done is we've included areas, we've expanded it to include towards Navy Hill and out even towards the industrial area and Lore Base.
Mhm.
So we're using that area, that circumference of area as our base of area, to identify potential, because a lot of phase 1s have already been completed. So it's been difficult to identify phase 1s, but phase 2s is basically where they go through and they do testing and they try to figure out what type of contaminants are existing in that area,
I
and then
see.
that would create the remediation plan
Okay.
for it, which is phase 3. So
Okay.
the phase 2s, there are 4 sites that have been identified, but the working group is still looking to dial that in.
Can we go back to the blighted?
Sure.
So that was a grant that OPD received for how much again?
The blighted, I believe, is 150,000,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken.
And that's
I'm sorry, I have the phone.
all right. Is there
200, I'm sorry,
specific
200,000.
200,000
Yes.
specific areas on the island for blighted properties, or are you guys just kind of assessing right now?
Yes, it's an assessment. So
Okay.
it's basically to identify potential locations
Sure.
that qualify under the
And what are the
definition of blight.
criterias for blighted properties to be considered?
So that's the part that the working group is still working
Okay, still
towards.
working. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Taking into
Okay.
account the new law that
Got it.
that's been
Okay.
introduced.
Sorry.
Sure.
Go ahead. Move on.
I just got a couple more grants that we're running. One is the USDA Solid Waste Training Program, which is essentially to upskill and certify our solid waste personnel in anticipation of the development of the landfills for Tini and Rhoda, and of course the expansion of our landfill here. We're working actively with this grant with through NMTech to conduct the trainings and OSHA. And the last one is the Swiffer grant, which is the solid waste infrastructure for recycling program, which is funded by the US EPA, and it's essentially a program that provides us equipment that work towards recycling and diverting waste from the landfills. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Sablon, for the overview. And then, Ms. Bahalaja, did you want to provide more?
Chair and members of this committee. So the Office of Planning and Development, as you probably are aware, the law enabled them to apply for grants. And that's why when you look at Office of Planning and Development, we have like all sorts of grants, whether it be small or big. Some of them are coming from FEMA, such as the blighted building and the microbeach erosion, and that is under the Building Resilient Infrastructure Community funded under FEMA. And the reason for that being a small amount really is they have a program called Project Scoping. And in that project scoping, it just meant that we cannot come up with a detailed project. So what it is it gives us the opportunity to collect data. And so for like microbeach erosion, we need to study like the wave actions and how probably come up with a preliminary design, like 30% of how we wish to propose for an erosion control. And then we reapply again for like a phase 2 project. The others, such as the Swiffer, those are solid waste that pertains to equipment for all 3 islands. And then also the grant from USDA is catered towards the training of equipment operators for all 3 islands. So under the ASADRA funds, which is probably the biggest fund of it, $56 million, at stake, we now have $32 million because we need to get our comprehensive solid waste plan approved. Previous OPD had contracted with a firm called GBB, who happened to be a receiver for the Guam landfill, to do this comprehensive solid waste plan. And then there was a dispute among the parties. And so we've been working with US EPA as the grantor, and with Governor Palacios and Lieutenant Governor David Apatang, we now came to a resolution that we would like to keep the same contractor because there is an existing contract, and that we don't need to procure it. And that's how we hope, that we could get this plan, and we need to finish it before the end of the year. So that's under the Office of Planning and Development.
I believe according to the 2023 annual report, a final draft is expected for EPA review in the first quarter of this year.
It's actually been submitted. It
Okay.
has been submitted in December 28th. We had comments from EPA. It came back to us. We fixed it, and then there's comments again. And this is where we want our consultant to work on it.
Okay.
We don't have the capacity nor the capability really to do it in-house. Most of what our in-house did is gather data and work with Public Works on Tinian and on Rhoda and also on Saipan.
Okay. Anything else you want to add to your?
Thank you.
Okay.
And then under our 702 covenant funding, most of our projects are either, actually most of them are renovation projects. I know that it has been a concern for our islands of Tinian and Rhoda on the West San Jose Tinian subdivision. And those we have already hired John Gurley, who's the Micronesian Environmental Services. In fact, I'm hoping that they would mobilize their field people out to the site. We've been communicating with the Army Corps of Engineers, who is actually reviewing the NEPA process for OIA. For the Rhoda, we finally had an agreement with OIA through the NEPA process that we will just do the water line along the road and not necessarily say it's connected to the subdivision. When we say it's connected to the subdivision, it's going to be like West San Jose subdivision, where we need to do a full EA, environmental assessment for it. But I think what the Rhoda Doogie water line, it just really needs to have that water line so that both sides of the roadway can be served by this water line. Thank you. And let me just have Narissa kind of run through our CIP under the 702 covenant funding.
So a lot of our CIP projects are currently ongoing. One of the main ones are the PSS fire alarm system. It's approximately 3.8 million, and that includes schools from Tinian and Rhoda, and the 16 schools here in Saipan. Also included is a Phase 2 Beach Road project, which CIP is providing 6 million. And then with the FEMA cost share, we have a little over 3 million available for Typhoon U2 and Mangkut. And also included is the DOC HVAC project, surveillance system, and the fire alarm system at the Department of Correction. And then also with, we have several projects with CHCC. One was for the electronic health record, hospital equipment, a backup generator, and patient flooring replacement. So those are our current ongoing projects for CIP.
Go ahead.
Chair and members of the committee, so under our program also, we handle the hazard mitigation program under the Super Typhoon U2, which is the disaster 4404. We have about $80 million worth of projects. At this point, 40 million of that is going towards the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. That's replacement of wooden power posts to concrete power posts for all 3 islands. Right now, they just finished the design for Rhoda and Tinian. So we're going to go into the Phase 2, which is the construction portion. For our hazard mitigation projects on Tinian and Rhoda also are like the early warning systems. We have several generator projects for the Tinian Health Center, for Rhoda under the Typhoon Mangkut. And then for the Saipan CUC, we have the underground power line from the hospital to power plant 1.
Okay.
We have also additional water mitigation projects, and that's to put generators in the wells, like in the Katmang areas and Cobler View areas. So those are funded under the FEMA.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sidusmasi, Director. So I guess I can start with some basic questions. I'm just looking at the annual report for 2023, and I'm not familiar with ASADRA, but based on what I read, U.S. EPA administers 56 million in ASADRA funding, and this funding does not expire, correct? And that's the 56 million that you had mentioned earlier. And are there any other funding sources under ASADRA, or is it strictly EPA?
Yes, Chairwoman, this is a US EPA funded
Okay.
disaster for the disaster relief.
Okay, and so it's I guess it's pending review of the comprehensive integrated solid waste management, correct?
Yes,
In order
ma'am.
for okay, so nothing has been drawn down from this money. The grant has been awarded, but nothing has been drawn down.
Actually, we have been provided pots of funds to utilize to develop the plan, along with also procuring some of the equipment needed to support the processing of the Super Typhoon U2 debris, along with the cleanup of the Tinian, the fire, and the hazardous materials that were removed from Tinian. So funds have been provided to address immediate needs while the plan is being completed.
Okay. And does the funding allow for hiring of personnel to assist with the projects that you, yes?
Yes, we do. We have several staff that are funded entirely or partly by the ASADRA funds, including our partnering agencies with DPW and also some municipal staff.
Got it. So how many FTEs would you say that this is that's funded under this program?
Currently, I believe in our work plan, we have approximately 19 FTEs.
19
yeah.
FTEs covered
But
by.
at varying percentages.
Got
Not
it.
everybody's covered at 100%.
Is there an amount that's set aside under this funding for
Yes,
personnel?
yes, to support the development of the plan and for the implementation of the approved projects.
Okay. Are you able to share with us what the
Yes.
amount is?
Oh, the amount for the personnel?
Yeah.
I believe for FY 24 and 25, if I'm not mistaken, it's around the 1.9 million
Okay,
range.
1.9. And that's all on just personnel under OPD.
No, it's
So
split
it's-
between OPD, DPW, DPW, BCQ as well,
Okay.
DPW Rota, Tinian, and some municipal staff,
I see.
and also the Northern Islands,
Okay.
NEMO as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, okay. Um, the two projects that you had mentioned earlier, the Oliai Sports Center and the Garapan Revitalization. The Oliai Sports Center was allotted like 21 million, correct?
Yes.
And that's I think the A&E design is being worked on. Where are we with that? And is it? I just want to ask because I think when the Secretary of Finance came in to ask for assistance on the line of credit, I believe these two projects were under that were on that spreadsheet. And I, from what I recall, there was not much left on the 21 million because the A&E portion of it took much of the monies. Is that I don't sorry,
Chair and
I'm
members
trying
of
to
the-
recall what
okay.
was the conversation.
Yeah. So out of the 21 million, actually, maybe 2 million is allocated for the A&E for both event center and the sports center.
Okay.
So 11 million from the Garapan Revitalization also had an A&E budget. Then the rest goes to construction. At this point, in fact, we just resume our design because we stopped at 30%.
30%. Okay.
And where it's just hesitant to continue on working with consultants when we know that we don't have the money to pay them. We were hoping that the line of credit would have been approved and we would have moved on. So 30%, we do have a contract with each consultant. Fortunately, the contract is extended towards the period of performance of the grant, which expires in 2026. So we're not, we don't have to hopefully not renegotiate, but sometimes our firm comes back and says, hey, you have us standing by, we need to charge you with escalated costs, right? Because sometimes they hire people for that specific project and then we, tell them to stop work. So those are the things that, fortunately, with the event center and the sports facilities, they have not, knock on wood, requested for that. And I hope that we can continue moving with the design.
What was budgeted for A&E for the event
I
center
think
and
the event is about 800,000, and I think about the same. I don't have the specific numbers, but also the sports facility is about the same.
okay.
So, like the sports facilities will have tennis courts and swimming pool, and the swimming pool itself, is going to be expensive.
So the 30 the A&E the 30% on the A&E is for both, right? The event center and the sports facility, but it's kind of on hold because the cost is greater than what we had budgeted for.
The reason why we're kind of stalling it is because I guess the CNMI doesn't have the funds to upfront the cost, right? Because it's on a reimbursable basis.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've paid the consultants, I guess, using the CNMI coffer, about maybe $256,000 for both consultants. And we have been making payments to the Garapan Revitalization Construction. We're averaging probably about maybe 300 to 400,000 a month. Luckily that with EDA, it takes us maybe a maximum of 10 days to get reimbursed. So we've developed a SOP with EDA that, will get a preconditional approval. And then once CNMI Finance issues a check, we right away provide EDA with the proof of payment, and then they process our reimbursement.
Yeah. So the estimated timeline for the A&E for these two was how long were you guys given to?
So the contract right now, as it stands, it's all the way to meeting the period of performance for the grant, which is 2026,
So when will actual construction begin?
when we finish the plan.
Okay. All right. And by then we would there would we would still have enough money for the actual construction, because in 2 years from now the cost may have gone up again a significant amount,
Right.
right? And so that would probably mean we need to scale back on whatever the design was.
I think that we have looked into that. Like the event center, we probably will phase out the construction because we know that we cannot afford, to develop the entire design.
Does OPD have any plans to request for or apply for additional funding to see if we can actually complete what is in the design? Or
I honestly, I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, because we are hopefully banking on this EDA, but also the CNMI has to
To-
do its part and come up with the money
Sure.
for, to pay for it
Okay.
upfront, and they get reimbursed.
okay. Great, thank you. Members, I will now open the floor for your questions. Recognize Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good afternoon, Director, and Ms. Beneventi and Mr. Sablan. Zus masi ini tempon mezu ni patavan yentus po di OPD and CIP. You mentioned earlier that you're funding under OPD funding the EDA project. You mentioned earlier, Director, that you funding EDA project through OPD grant, right? That's grant, OPD grant fund.
So under OPD, there's the economic development grants.
That's a federal grant, right?
Right.
So I'm just trying to understand, because I thought that federal funds cannot be reimbursed by federal, because federal funds. I just want to make sure that that's correct. That you can be reimbursed with federal, using federal funds to have seed money to proceed with the EDA project.
I believe that the funding that paid for some of the finished product, like at Yarpan Revitalization, is probably from the local funds. And then we request for reimbursement.
Okay, we just wanna, because I understand in the past that you appear here that that's the reason why we have to go through this process, because I was trying to understand why we're requesting for assistance and then we're not giving directly, but rather we have to use our own money to reimburse because of past abuses that subject funds are not used for that particular purpose, right? That's the reason why we're in this kind of a situation that we have to use our own money in order for us to get that, although we're awarded. But in order for us to be reimbursed, we have to use our money so that we can provide them with the documents that project is that exact project is done, not using money to other project that is not awarded. So I'm just trying to understand that, and I just want to make sure that what we're using now can be reimbursed.
Senator, so I cannot respond to any abuses because I don't know of, and I'm not, I don't know of any abuses.
Okay.
The reason for EDA is almost for all federal purposes, everything works on a reimbursable.
That-
But for some grantors, they allow us to charge through the grant, FEMA. 702 covenant funding, even US EPA, with the exception of EDA. Now, EDA came back to the CNMI and says, you upfront your costs and then we'll reimburse you.
The reason why I bring this up, because I brought this in the previous conversation when you guys came, and you mentioned that we have to go through reimbursement because you have to provide that particular documentation in order to be reimbursed. Because if it's not for that exact project, you will not be reimbursed if you submit a different documentation. That's why I repeat this, just to be clear that that's the case. And I want to make sure that we can be reimbursed with federal funds. And you mentioned now that it's probably a local fund. That's why we're getting reimbursed. I just want to make this, to
So when we have a contract with a contractor, we process the payment. We send it to the Department of Finance. I certify payment because we go out and inspect the project, and this road is done, that pavement is done, and we certified that what we are requesting for payment is based on actual progress, right? Now, the Department of Finance, that's their responsibility is to make the payment. Where they get the payment, I'm just assuming that it's a local funds.
okay.
And then when we get the payment, that's when we provide that proof of payment to EDA, and then they reimburse us.
Okay. But that's OPD funding, right? That's OPD funding you're requesting from finance to pay. You mentioned earlier grant, OPD grant, right?
I mean, this EDA grant, the grantee is the Office of Planning and Development.
Okay, just to to be clear in my
Sure.
mind that either it's allowable or it might be a local funding that is submitted for reimbursement. Anyway, in regards to the CIP, I noticed that we're receiving less than the previous years. I want to ask why.
So, the 702 covenant funding is a competitive grant. When we say competitive, they grade us on the entire financial system of the CNMI, procurement, our expenditure rate, just how we submit reports. And so we haven't been doing good at that. One of them is the single audit, right? And so it cost us about $1 million because that's one of the issues.
So you mentioned expenditure. So that means we're not spending on time.
We're not expending as we probably should. So usually OIA, when they send us a budget or a grant and they says, here's $7 million, we expect you to finish it to use up the money in a year's time. So half of our argument is like, okay, we still need to go to the NEPA process, right? NEPA process sometimes takes 6 months to sometimes a year, and we've experienced it with our West San Jose Tinian water line. So, we also asked that question to OIA. It's like, hey, is there somewhere that you can put a little more points? I mean, we're trying to expend it, but sometimes it's beyond our control because in order for us to spend it, they need to have a NEPA approval and they need to give us an authorization to proceed. So yes, I expenditure rate. So just for your information, we try to get the entire budget and spread it over 12 months. Like we expect an expenditure of maybe $689,000 per month. And it doesn't happen. Like in FY 2023, there are some that we only expended 19% per month. There's 1 month in May 2023 that we expended 119%. It depends on what projects.
Okay, I just wanna, Madam Chair, 2 more questions, then I'll you. That's why I raised that question, because the commodities are rising. Yeah, and I'm trying to understand, when the commodities are very high, we receive less. So now I understand that we spend less, and I want to know why the project are not moving forward. Why who's supposed to be is responsible or in charge with moving? And I know that you mentioned about NIPA process in that 6 month. Yeah, Tinian is, I think it's 3 years already, and we the leadership decided to put 2.5 million. I think 2.5 millions for that project. And the thing that bothers me is, I know that that 2.5 is no longer right. 2.5, right? It's no longer for now. I'm not an engineer, but I think 2.5 nowadays. I don't know whether any construction or company or bidders will allow 2.5. That's my concern for Tinian, because it took 3 years. Uh, I want to know, when did OPD or CIP hire that you mentioned earlier about the person to do a environmental assessment. When did you guys hire environmental assessment? Do we have
I
any
think
here
we just hired in January.
this year?
Yeah.
Why wasn't hired back then?
Senator, I think that I've testified before here that OIA told us it was a category X, it's a Cat X, and that we didn't need an environmental assessment. But when we provided them all the documents from the Department of Public Land, it did not meet the NEPA requirement. And they wanted us to do a full environmental assessment.
And you were guys informed 2 or
You know,
3 years
so
later?
there's a change in personnel that do the NEPA also at the Army Corps of Engineers.
So because of that changes, as a result of that changes, we're affected by this.
Yes, because maybe somebody who came in either
No, but-
knew everything about the regs and found
can-
out that we do need to do an E EA.
That's why I continue to and I continue to repeat this, because a lot of our homesteaders there, tried to apply for CDBGDR, but they couldn't get it because they couldn't build a house there
Yeah.
because of the water infrastructure. That's why, I keep repeating this, because it took very long, 2 years, and we still haven't. And can OPD subsidize whatever the difference one with the 2.5 nowadays if it's approved?
I think we need to bid it out once the design is, actually
I-
the design
I
is
understand.
done. Yeah.
But can OPD subsidize the shortfall of that 2.5?
When you say OPD,
Office of Planning and Development, can you can you subsidize? Can that office subsidize the difference? Whatever the cost might be in the coming days, if everything is cleared and good to go.
I can't answer you that question. I need to know how much it's going to be.
Because that's a big loss for Tinian resident. But
Yeah,
not,
and Senator, may I just clarify too that based on environmental, the permit that was issued to the Department of Public Lands did not allow for any septic IWDS.
I understand.
And so I think that's why when also our NEPA looked at everything, they're like, how the heck are you going to put water and where are they going to put the sewer? So, environmentally, I think they're just concerned that we're going to put water and power and where are they going to dispose of sewage? And so that's one thing that our consultant is really working with DCRM and BECQ regarding the IWDS.
I think the major concern there with EPA is the contamination of the underground water. So I was hoping that regulatory body can work together, because if a person build a water reservoir, I think that will address EPA. But none of the regulatory comes together and work something out, so that the resident of Tinian, that area, or even Rhoda or Olmsted can build a reservoir to address EPA. but instead they keep denying a resident to build infrastructure because absence of water infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I was hoping maybe perhaps either CIP or OPD can work together with BECQ and do something about that, instead of waiting for how many more years for NEPA process or some.
Yeah. And Senator, just, to assure you that we are doing that now with the environmental assessment, is we want to make sure that there's going to be a disposal system for the sewage. Because, we're going to put in water line and power line. And that's where the federal is concerned, is like, oh, you're going to spend all this money for water line and power line, and there's no place for the sewage, right? So we're working with DCRM and says, hey, you guys, look at it. BECQ, you need to allow for, the people to build houses and get a disposal system.
Yeah, that's why we have local people working with federal people in every department, so perhaps they can mitigate whatever issue. And I think that can be justified because it's the necessity of a family to build a house.
Yes.
I don't think even in your office you said that if a project or funding is not spent on time, and before it expires, you request from Office on Tier, and they grant you an extension, right? You mentioned that in the previous conversation. So I don't see why federal people cannot assist if we have local regulatory staff that can mitigate the issue. And because the commodity is rising, everybody's having difficulty to meet their daily needs, and the most basic and most important in their life is build a house and not rely on federal assistance housing or whatever federals are assisting us. We need to be dependable. That's why we're here to try and work with you guys, the professionals, so we can help our people, and uh, rather than just keep depending on federal, because soon federal will, like for example, even with CIP funds, because we're not spending, we're cutting. That's what we need to, whoever's job is that, we have to work together as a team and push forward so that federal will continue to give us more, because it's simple common sense. If you're not spending, they will not, even if you ask more, they will not give you because you have a lot of lapse. The same thing as our budget here. You a department asking for more budget, and we see in their budget that they're not spending. Then why should we give more? Instead, we'll remain the same or cut because they're not spending it. So I'm sorry to say it, because we're elected officials. They keep coming to us and keep blaming us on every single thing, even though it's not our part. But I can understand that, because, like what they said, anything and everything, it comes to us because we are representative. We represent our people to make sure that we will also alleviate some of the the hardship that they're having now, especially nowadays. You can see that everything is, even the legislature cutting down hours because of funding issues. So let's try to help our people. I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm asking that let's work together and assist our people. Jesus Masi.
Well, duly noted, Senator.
Thank you,
Edmund Birkin.
Madam Chair.
So just Mossy, Senator. I guess I just have a quick follow up to Senator Cruz. So is the PDAC counts, like, is it still intact?
Yes, Chair, it is still intact.
Okay, so and then they still meet on is it a monthly basis,
We
quarterly?
meet quarterly.
Quarterly. And I'm asking because it sounds like there could be some maybe disconnect from the stakeholders, right? When there's a plan to or a project to implement, and I guess what with kind of what happened is that there was money for a project, and then some government agency didn't do its part, and now it's delaying this part. So I'm asking about the PDAC because I'm wondering if this is where these conversations take place, where, when OPD comes out with a plan and a project, then all the government agencies who are there as stakeholders provide their input and their recommendations. So uh, do you feel that that quarterly is enough, or maybe meet more often than quarterly? And when those meetings take place, are there any action items that are being discussed? And what's the process like when those meetings take place? Do we go do they go back and review what those action items are and get what the status is before they move on to the next action items?
Chair, so the PDAC is just an advisory board, and a lot of the plans that go through there are in the just the planning process, like a state resource planning document. We just submitted a state hazard mitigation plan that needs to be just sanctioned or blessed by PDAC. At the end of the day, FEMA requires us to submit that by May 1st. So those are the things that go to the PDAC, and we provide the members, like with the plans for their review. We give them a deadline, and they come together at a meeting just to sort of vote for it or comment on it.
I guess I'm just trying to understand the issue with what Senator Cruz is bringing up, that there's these water pipe, or the water and power is to be installed, but then there's no sewage or disposal area for the sewage. So this is where I'm asking whether I think CUC is part of that council, right? And whether or not they were there to provide, I don't know what their recommendations are.
So for the public land subdivision, they're usually a major siting, and that's under the Department of Coastal Resource Management, and they have their own board members per se, and that is inclusive of CUC, BECQ, HBO, sort of all the regulatory agencies, and they vote there for that project. That's where they develop conditions and issuance of permits.
Okay. I guess I don't fully understand what the issue is, and I'm just trying to understand, why it almost sounds like it's an after the fact kind of thought, right? That where you have all these projects in place, and then later on find out that, well, where are you going to dispose the waste, right? So this is where I'm asking. I don't know if that's where PDAC meets and provide all the like all the bits and pieces of the puzzle, so that how to proceed. And
we fully understand Senator Cruz and even Senator Manglonia's position on all these with the NEPA, and perhaps maybe they're looking at CIP not doing their job. At the end of the day, really, we don't, we need to get all the approval from the federal agency,
Okay.
and we are trying our best. Like I said, I believe that we have records that states that, hey, OIA and NEPA, you told us that this is, what's going to happen, and now you come back and say you need a full environmental assessment, and we've brought that up. We've said these are critical projects.
yes.
Because these are for the community, for the individuals that need to build their homes.
Yes.
Um,
So it sounds like part of the bottleneck is maybe NEPA.
I mean, I wouldn't call it a bottleneck because that's a requirement on federal funding.
Mhm.
What I see it now that we see all the picture was when the permit was issued for the subdivision, and that the permit stated that there shall not be any IWDS in the subdivision. I think we should have just say, hey, listen, where are these people going to dispose their sewage? So now that we're using federal funds to do the water line and the power line, they're like, oh, you're going to do water line and power line, but what about the
The
sewage? So that's what we're working on, Senator, and hopefully we'll resolve that by maybe having CUC certified that, hey, we would put your water line, connect your water line to the municipal, as long as you have some kind of sewage disposal system and that you have your water line and your power line.
And this is related to Homestead?
This is the Homestead project.
So where is DPL in this? Because I thought that DPL is responsible for infrastructure before they open the Homestead. So I don't understand why this is falling on a different entity when my understanding is that DPL is responsible for infrastructure before they open the Homestead for distribution.
I honestly, Chair, I don't know, but this is a capital improvement project that the municipalities of Tinian and Rhoda can avail of, because this is their portion of the CIP funding.
Sure.
So, if DPL didn't fund it, they surely can come to CIP and say, hey, we want to fund our water line and our power line.
Okay. Okay, I guess I would just like to see more communication between the different
And that's
Um,
where we took the whatever environmental document that DPL
okay.
did for the subdivision.
Okay. Thank you. Any other members? Recognize Senator Paul.
Chair. Liz, this is new, no, Steve? Nadanya i 702 na ni OPDs and Torisisya na opisina. I'm just wondering, where does Grand Office, no Management Office play here, Gini? Donya role?
So the Office of Grants and Management, they take care of the technical grant and it's a tap and map and the maintenance. And we just handle the 702 covenant funding under the CIP project.
Okay.
So we don't even fund any of OPD's staff under the covenant funding because the grants and terms and conditions states that, only those individuals that work directly for the 702 covenant funding are
Okay.
salaried. OPD is, most of them are, their salaries are provided by local, or like Mr. Sablon said, some are 50% ASADRA funds, some are funded through that BRIC program, like, 10%.
Different,
Yeah,
funding.
so, it really is, it's a lot of monitoring, really at the end of putting a report together for the federal government because of the different cost shares that we use
I
throughout.
guess my question is more along planning, right? Because your office is planning, and a good example is Rhoda's struggling now with, for example, stevedoring services. So we need a crane, right? So we have to go to EPI to get a grant for a crane, for example, right? We don't come to OPD for a crane
You could come to you could come to CIP for
or
equipment.
CIP. So that's what I'm
Yes.
saying. Shouldn't there be better coordination between the two offices? And they were mentioning earlier about AG PDAC, right? So PDAC is, I mean, our job here in the legislature, now, if everything's going forward and the planning is all in place, we don't have any, we will be out of a job. We don't have to be bothering you guys. And so I guess I'm going back to Senator Cruz and Chairwoman saying that
Put
there must be
together.
some kind of edgy voices, to raise this concern up. And I'm just trying to think out loud. How do we coordinate this so that one hand knows what the other hand is doing? Like the and I bring this up, you know. I'm sorry that every once in a while we remember projects and we have to call you and say, why is this delayed? Nailo, there should be and that's why in 702 you assign a person for Rhoda or and a person for Tinian and for Saipan CIP. So maybe that person we just have to have like a quarterly meeting and so we can get an update and then we know what to follow up on our end also, and there's no dropping the ball along the way. I'm just trying to think out loud, uh, because this is not with you guys, but again, I repeat myself. When we first got in last year, and I found out that we could have gotten more projects, but it's just our people in Rhoda. They're maybe some of them are sleeping. They're not bringing their concern to OPD or to Grant's office because they didn't address some of our problems down on Rhoda. And uh, I mentioned for a couple 100 million, and we only have 3 million altogether for during those times. So I'm just wondering how we can we you give us an idea how we can make sure that these projects are attended to. Um, like for example, you have a very good program on blighted building project. We have a lot of blighted building also on Rhoda, but it seems like it's not included in this project.
It is. It's for the
In the
CNMI.
$200,000 grant.
Yes, for the
So,
assessment.
let us know. Do we need a law for that? Because I know that law is local law on Saipan, right? So appreciate you let us know what we need to do. So uh, when there's such a program, we can also include that so that we can clean up also our roadways, villages. Um, the so I guess the issue here is we need maybe a better connection between OPD and Office of Grant and Management with the municipality, right? So that they can be aware uh, of this funding. So, for example, you guys have a good record keeping on 702 money, right? You have a column for Rhoda, Tinia, and Saipan. Can you do that with the Asadra funds also? I appreciate, you have X amount, so can you do a running chart? Because I have to commend you on the overall plan, right? The integrated, comprehensive integrated solid waste. So please have a listing of the projects so that we can also follow up with our municipality there. Um, how much are we getting in 702 this year? The latest, we don't know, 8 million altogether for the cinema, or I'm just curious.
We haven't gotten our 2025 budget call yet, but from our last meeting with our grants manager, it's a little over 8 million.
Little over, and last year was
7 million.
7 million.
7.03.
So the single audit is one problem. No, that's the major problem. What's the other one? What's the next one?
Single audit, and then they take a look at the financial situation of the CNMI. Kind of that's one of the criteria in
That
their
one drops
grading
you 1
system.
million right away every year, no?
Actually, we've been consistent with the 8 million until last year. That's when it dropped to 7 million. And so hopefully we're going to get back our 8 million. But we hope that we can get 10 million.
So sorry, where can we get those requirements so that we can look at the proper
Oh, no,
agency?
it's there as chair.
in
Whenever
the-
they give us a budget call, they give us the report card. So, we always get an F actually at CIP. It's like 48%. Our CIP actually is 100%. Like we provide, reports, we have progress meetings. But then the other criterias, such as the financial system,
Sure.
procurement, and I guess the single audit.
So I guess that's what I'm asking. If we can we get a list of all the requirements or the criteria so that we can understand where the deficiencies are, and then take a look at which government entity is not doing its part.
Sure.
And then just have that discussion with them, and convey the importance and urgency of them doing their part, because it greatly affects the ability of the 702 funds, right? I mean, if we could get 10 million, why not? Why settle for 7 million if you can get an additional 3 million out of it? And if some of the government agencies are playing a part in the deficiency, then we need to address that, so that we can try and avail the most of the monies that we can get. I mean, that's an opportunity for us. So whenever we don't get the maximum amount, we're the ones losing out on that. Yeah.
But Chair, also we need to be mindful that, when you have a project, it just doesn't happen in 6 months, right?
Sure.
When we do have a project, we design it first. The design maybe sometimes takes 3-4 months. Construction procurement takes about 2 months. We evaluate, we go out to contract. Then we face construction. And I don't think that there's ever a construction that is like right on time, because there are issues out there in the environment that sometimes puts
Sure.
us back, right?
But normally
Un-
that's all being taken into consideration during the planning phase, right? Like, you would try and identify all the different challenges or obstacles that pose to the project, and then you kind of put some cushion in there, or have a contingency plan in case this timeline doesn't. I know that most constructions don't complete 100% every time, but there's also that layer where you try to put some cushion in there, so that in anticipation of some of the challenges that you may be faced with.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's where permits come in.
Yes.
There's conditions to the permits.
Yes.
I mean, down when you're digging down in the ground, what you find at 0 feet doesn't mean you
Mean-
find the
oh,
same
yes.
at 30 feet, right?
Yes.
And that's why sometimes when we do soil borings, we need to do soil borings at every 30 feet, every 50
Got
feet.
it. Okay.
Sometimes we run into hard rock. So I think that horizontal construction is probably a lot harder than doing vertical construction, right? So so that being said, that annual spending of the entire budget is never going to happen. We can plan, we do the planning, we do the design, we go out to bid. You never know also if there are protests among the bidders. Those are anticipated. So
Okay. So go ahead.
So can I ask, are you aware what is the issue? The chairman here of Fiscal Affairs is here with the single audit. What's the major issue?
Oh man, Senator, you know what? I think I'm the wrong person to answer
So I'm
that.
going to ask the chairman, can we have a meeting just on single audit? Because it's costing us $1 million every year. So I've been hearing about this decades, right? So it's costing us already 10 million. We might as well tell MPLT to fund that if it's a money problem or what's the problem. But I think if we can show them that at least we're moving forward, they might give us some credit, right? So at least some reason to show that we're moving forward, and they might give us some credit for that. So
I know that the single audit from our memo from finance is due in June, like in a couple months. And so they all want us to concentrate on, I think it's 2020 and 2021, right?
So it's
Yeah.
a matter of when it's completed in the fiscal year. So we need to give them to ask them to do that early, so we can get our million every year, right? If we do it on time. Anyway, let me ask you on this road planning, since your office is Office of Planning and Development. That we keep raising this up to DPW because DPW handles federal highway, right? And we always say we want to finish our perimeter road for how many years? The perimeter road, Route 100, right? they will listen to us, but then they'll never do like the land exchange. They started it, then they stopped, and then now we need to find a stretch of private land. Is that something that your office can handle and prepare for the municipality areas so that if there's money, they can start, and also to do the whatever permitting or something, so that then once that's done, I think if we go too deep to federal highway and say, can you fund money for that, they're gonna say, oh, it's already permitted, it's clear, and so they'll fund it. But forever they always have that excuse that the land and the permitting. So is that possible? And so sometimes we end up just saying, just try to do this road just so that we can use the money, and then delay after delay after delay, right? But I think we can all agree that one of the most important road on the island is the around the island road. So is there any way you can help us, planning and development, or is that up to federal highway again to do?
I really believe that when the Office of Planning and Development was created, it's supposed to gather everyone's plans, including autonomous agencies. The vision was that anybody that comes in and wants to develop or to build, that the Office of Planning and Development should be the library where they can come in and take a look at the plans. And when we came in, that was one of our mission, is to gather all the planning documents. Hey, where do we build parks? Where can we build hospitals? I mean, these are supposed to be part of this planning, and that, every agency, such as even DPW, like if we do have a plan that we're going to face, 3 miles of road every year, that we would follow that plan.
Yeah.
So I believe that OPD has just several of the planning documents, such as the resources and the smart, safe growth. And, now there's a lot of other plans like the Green Growth Initiative. Everything needs to be incorporated. And so I think that is our job at the Office of Planning and Development. And you're right, Senator, it's something, because the PDAC Advisory Council consists of all of the individuals from the different agencies. So yes, we'll.
So can you take on that challenge and see, on the Route 100, what do we need to? And by the way, this will help the government a long way, because public works, after heavy rain and the storms, they go out there and they have to get corals, equipment, and all that. But once we pave the road, especially to the waterfall area and past that, then the farmers along the way will not have to wait for heavy equipment and public works, payloader and
Right.
dump truck. So I'm saying it's going to go a long way, and we just have to identify, start moving again with land exchange, and just a few only, I believe, and then to do the permitting, so that federal highway will fund those. No, so finally, I'm going to give the others, on the water Doogie, the Doogie water. That's already going to move forward already. What's the status?
Yes. It's actually, we just finished all our letters to the regulatory agencies, to have them concur that there should not be major impacts on it. And we've communicated with our NEPA, and we've confirmed that we are not touching the subdivision.
So we can, like when can we actually have like a beating out, or when would we come to that point?
Maybe in a couple months.
In a couple months?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Poe, and I will recognize Senator Jude.
Madam Chair, and buenas tardes para Mzuni. PD. Maybe just and I'll just kind of circle back with regards to the line of questioning by the chair, and also to Senator Cruz, and also to Senator Poe. I believe it's a good opportunity to maybe invite other agencies also as well, because we keep inviting OPD and it appears that they do their best, but there's other significant entity that should be sitting before us too, maybe in the same meeting, perhaps, because some of these plans and infrastructure projects were executed from years past, and some agencies have actually initiated to, for example, the homestead, they initiated to issue by doing a I don't what's the perfect word for me to use, instead of like going down to the ground to survey and subdivide all this, they subdivided in house, and they just make people pick whether or not they consulted with the other multiple agencies. We're finding that out now, that we still need to go back for further review, whether it be NEPA or Fish and Wildlife, or I mean, I'm not NEPA, but Fish and Wildlife, DEQ, and all that. So, but at least we now know that there was efforts made previously when we allocate the funds of 2.5, to say that there was none, but then only to learn that after submitting necessary documents for review, there was a need for a NEPA review. So I just wanted to ask this: is there really and this going back to Liz, is there an application for earth moving or CRM major siting permit that indicate there's no IWDS to be installed or planned for West San Jose in particular?
That is one of the conditions, Senator. In fact, I think I just spoke to DCRM, permit manager, and we've got the documents because we needed those to provide our consultant, John Gurley, in order for him to, start working on the EA.
Okay, so perhaps, and I don't want to speak ahead of what's going to come up from Mr. Gurley's product, but is there a way to provide a recant on that particular item of requiring, prohibiting IWDS, and instead provide that for as long as there is an indication that there will be a, because the leadership of TINAN is actually working with a federal agency to try and work with the best option to treat the sewage treatment plant, not just West San Jose, but the entire island, because of the impending growth. And this is a longer process than we wanted to. But just to circle back on Senator Cruz's concern of the rising cost of construction material, building a house, and for, I think you guys know that it's $250,000 right now to build a 2-bedroom house or a 1-bedroom house on Tinian. At least that's the price tag right now that we hear. So what I'm trying to say is, if that can be done, to recant that recommendation and allow for the individual house to build an IWDS to satisfy the concern of DEQ, and that would definitely go a long ways as far as that particular provision.
Senator, and I think that's what we've communicated with our consultant. In fact, we asked one of our project managers to kind of just do a layout of, because the lot size there is only 700 square meters, right? Is to put, let's say, get the lot, put like a 3-bedroom house, and then use the regulations from BECQ, how to lay like a septic leaching field, just to see if it's enough for the lot for a 700 square meter. Because also in the permit, it also states that if CUC can certify that they will connect the water to their main municipal water line, right? Which I think that should not be an issue, as long as we are able to put the infrastructure in.
Yeah, the reason why I mentioned that, no, and I am in support of building a sewage treatment plant anywhere, especially the islands, but we're just trying to be realistic also with the time frame, and as we continue giving homestead out, we also want to be mindful of the environmental. There's a balance of environmental concerns, but at the same time, we also want to make sure that the livelihood of the people are not jeopardized further, no, with any other restriction. But I believe that if we um, and I almost want to ask Madam Chair that maybe we should and the next time we have a meeting, if it's not out of protocol, we'll ask your consultant to sit in so we can get a clearer answer as far as what I just said. No, because to the point earlier that was made by Senator Cruz, I remember when we were discussing the CDBGDR housing program, of which a lot of our kids, our constituents are actually situated. And one of the questions that we ask is, can you, because there's no running water, city water just yet, but if you're concerned of potentially the applicant or the homesteader going to build a what we commonly known as a outhouse, no, which we discourage, but can we allow for the construction to include a self-contained cistern or a water catchment to so that they can push forward with the loan? Unfortunately, the program has gone and gone, and some of our people have lost on that, lost out on that grant. So again, I want to perhaps bring it back to your consultant and say, hey, if we can reconsider that provision and go ahead and allow the water line to go through, but at the same time allow for the individual wastewater disposal system, as you indicated earlier, Nick, to see if the setbacks meet the requirements.
Madam Chair and Senator Hofschneider, so our protocol really is we get the mayor of each island to request for projects, to let us know what's going on. Your request, we certainly can set up a meeting with our environmental consultant. It doesn't have to be in here. We can just do it with the Tinian delegation, Rhoda delegation. Perhaps this is a good time now, and I can request our consultant to schedule a meeting with Tinian delegation and the mayor. We'd like to have the mayor involved also because, same as the mayor of Rhoda, we communicate through her also.
Thank you. And last question. That's okay, Madam Chair. I'll yield back. I'll just ask that on another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jude, and I'll recognize Senator Donald.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Just a couple of clarifying questions. Do you have a person assigned on Rhoda, or is it to Rhoda?
Under the 702 covenant funding only, we are able to use our administration money to hire project managers. So we hire at least 3 companies that are architectural engineering firms that we assign them to either Rhoda projects, Rhoda, Tinian, and Saipan.
But you don't have a staff on Rhoda or Tinian.
No, we don't.
Have you ever requested for staff on Rhoda or Tinian? And the reason I ask is because of the disconnect or the communication between agencies, and so I don't know, maybe the idea of having somebody on Rhoda or Tinian to follow up on projects or take care of the list of projects that are being proposed by the mayor. Is that something that your office could consider?
We could request through our grantor, but Senator, as it is now, I think that the project managers worked up. They go to Rhoda every 2 weeks. We meet with our clients, with the stakeholders there. Like right now, we have the Rhoda Health Care renovation, doing interior, exterior. We're doing the hazard. We're doing the air conditioning, and we're also doing the shutter project for the hospital. But in addition to that, we have other projects that the mayor has requested. and that we have gone down, our project managers go down there to set up meetings.
Okay.
But it's certainly, I mean,
Well,
to
because
answer your question.
you know, we're going back and forth with the House on this MPLT bill to address, you know, funding projects, and you know, we always get the response that the mayors didn't provide projects or we didn't get a list of projects. But you know, we wouldn't be in this predicament if we had somebody assigned on Rhoda or Tinian to follow up on or provide those listings to your office or whichever entity. And part of that is to follow up with documents from all these agencies that are needed for these projects to move forward. And so you know, I hope that's something that you can consider in trying to get and train someone to be assigned on Road Artinian. And even if it's locally funded, that's something that I hope to see in your budget submission, but I don't think that's the case in next fiscal year's budget. But moving forward, I think that's something that your office can consider and employ to allow for someone to address these gaps between the mayor and your office, or the mayor, or you know, the entities within Rhoda and on Saipan.
Under the Office of Planning and Development, we do that. In fact, we just had several applications for solid waste coordinators. We haven't been successful, really. I think we've been advertising and we finally got maybe like one applicant that just submitted. Also, you know, just to be mindful, whenever we do that, US EPA sort of vets through all our documentations. And so we would coordinate with EPA, hey, can we hire this personnel, you know, to assist us with our solid waste projects on Rhoda.
But even if it's just an assigned personnel that takes care of all projects under OPD for Rhoda and communicate with you, your office here in Saipan, is that does that still need to go through all these other?
Not if it's locally funded.
Yeah, so
But, yeah.
that's
we-
what I
you
was
know,
trying to.
Yeah, we'd
to
like to use
suggest.
also our money there, right? Like,
Yeah.
to pay for them on behalf of the grant.
Okay. Can you help me understand the NEPA process, and that if you already have these list of projects funded or not, what steps can the municipalities take to begin the process so that once these documents are submitted, it's really, I mean, you know, there wouldn't be any hiccups with NEPA?
So it's on an annual basis. When the mayor submits, hey, I want this project for fiscal year 2024, provides us with a list of projects that Rhoda, you know, requires. We go, we write a proposal for it. We take a look at the kinds of activities. Are we going to have excavation? Anytime we do earth moving, it requires all like historical preservation, fish and wildlife. We coordinate with all the regulatory agencies, and we say, you know, the island of Rhoda is proposing to put pavilions down at the park. We prepare a layout of the facility. We submit all those to OIA. And then OIA submits that to Army Corps, who is their NEPA reviewer. And then whatever responses that we get from our local regulatory agencies, we give it to the NEPA process.
Yeah, so I'm trying to see, how do we close the gap or increase the expenditure rate in the sense of planning ahead, right? And getting all these documents ready to submit for the NEPA review.
I think like
to-
Senator
to-
Paul was saying, like if we can go to the Office of Planning and Development and, you know, we create all these list of projects, right? Whether it be road or parks, then, you know, perhaps those we've already have, you know, maybe like 5 on the list and not necessarily be funded not all 5 will be funded, but that we will have that list of projects. I think the other thing that we face is that every time there's a new administration or a new person per se, project priorities change. And basically, if you read the budget of OIA, that's probably one of also, one of the indicators that we do change our priorities. And that's one thing that we make them understand is, we do change priorities, right?
A good example is Paseo, no?
But
Your favorite project,
if
right?
the NEPA process is the same for the insular areas, we don't want to be losing money to another territory because of that process. But if it's the same, then how do we speed up on our part before it gets to the NEPA process? If it's, like I said, if it's the same for everyone,
We need to know what kind of project. We need to have a description. We need to have a footprint of what needs to be done in order for us to work on the NEPA process.
right? So I'm
So-
saying the footprint part of the project is what needs to be starting right now. If it's for next year, or 2 years from now.
But, we need all our, like our stakeholders also to say, hey, I want all these projects. So I hope that that's what we're going to accomplish on that comprehensive solid waste plan, because for each municipality, they have a list of projects that they want to accomplish for their solid waste. And maybe we should do that for all the other infrastructures, right? And I'm sure CUC has their water master plan, sewer master plan, and whatnot.
What
I
about
think with the 702 covenant funding, the budget is very small, really.
Right.
You can't do a sewer project with it, because sewer projects are very expensive. So most of our projects under the 702 covenant funding are renovation of public facilities, replacing air conditioning, buying equipment for, like, we just delivered some equipment to Rhoda Public Works, and so forth.
Okay. And the last question I had was the BIL. Is your office addressing any projects under the bipartisan infrastructure law?
Maybe Chris, you can answer that. We don't have any under the BIL.
So that's who's taking care of that? Is that OGM?
I believe that's OGM and Special Policy Advisor Tina. I believe they have projects under
So
that.
nothing that goes through your office, seeing as this is infrastructure.
We submitted a proposal for the climate pollution reduction grant that they're submitting. But that's a part of a group of applications that are being submitted under the Office of the Governor.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Donovan. Thank you, OPD. Just one thing before I forget, can the committee request for a comprehensive list of projects, both from OPD and CIP, to include the status of each project and the project cost, so that we can get an idea of all the projects that both entities are working on? And then I have one more question, or maybe clarification. On page 9 of the annual report that I provided to you, Liz, we're down at the bottom where it says statewide planning grant. It says CNMI economic recovery and feasibility carry capacity study. I guess in 2023, EDA awarded the CNMI $999,755 to conduct the CNMI economic recovery and feasibility carry capacity study, and this is anticipated to be completed by June of this year. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that? What that's about?
Sure. Yes, I'm actually spearheading that project, and we actually I had to skip out on one of the interviews today to attend this meeting, but it's been it's actually what it essentially is. It's a plan if you will, of that will provide a roadmap to recovery. And so what it is an assessment of our current condition, taking consideration the effects of the super typhoon and the pandemic, and basically trying to identify potential industry clusters that the CNMI can invest towards.
That is awesome. I'm so looking forward to the report that you guys will come out with,
Yes.
hopefully by June, right?
Well, actually, it's been extended to September.
Oh, okay.
And,
You know, because everybody's always asking us what's the plan to recover from all the super typhoon and the pandemic, and at least there's a dedicated team right now kind of working on assessing that, and hopefully, I feel like when there's so many different people trying to work on it, you have so many different ideas, but I think if you have one team that's leading it, right, then we can all share the same vision and mission, and everyone's on the same page, and I think that's how we can accomplish more than just everyone kind of doing their own thing. And similarly to like the grants, I wonder if OGM and OPD and all the other agencies sometimes probably duplicate efforts in the grants that they are applying. I know for a fact that like with OGM's, I mean, I applaud them for always going out and trying to get grants, right? And this Solar for All program, it's great that they were able to get so much money to help the residents. But in our discussion with CUC, they're not even informed or even part of the planning of that implementation. And I just feel like there needs to be a little bit more communication and planning and coordination, because without the stakeholders, you might run. You just don't want to get all that money, do all the planning, and then when you try to implement it, you fail to solicit someone else's feedback that could have implications on your implementation. So. If there are no other questions or from the members, we're good. Okay. I would like to thank again Mrs. Balhaja and your team. Thank you so much for coming in. And Chris, I'm sorry you had to miss
not at all.
your meeting, but we really do appreciate the update. And if we could just request for that comprehensive list of projects, that would greatly help us. And please let us know at any time if you guys are, having challenges or obstacles with other agencies. We're here to help, and if we can help facilitate that process and try to expedite it, we'd be more than happy to assist. So, Sudusmasi, and you guys are now dismissed. Sudusmasi.
Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank
you,
you.
members.
Okay, members, going down on the agenda, are there any other miscellaneous items you guys would like to discuss before we move on to the adjournment? We're good? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting, please? Thank you. A motion has been offered and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Today's RDP committee meeting is hereby adjourned at approximately 3:16 p.m. Sudusmasi members. Thank you.